Hi students, welcome to HSC Earth and Environmental Science and Module 8 Resource Management. This is video number 14 and we're going to focus a little bit closer to home this time on local waste management. Please excuse my croaky voice, I'm not feeling 100%, but I just wanted to pop this one out there so we're good to go for some stuff later on today. So this video is about evaluating the sustainability of a named waste management option, like most of the others in this section have been, this time focusing on our local waste management facilities. In the last video, where the focus was on disposal and storage of wastes, I used an example from the Central Coast Council, and realistically everywhere around, I was going to say New South Wales, but everywhere, are councils that have responsibility for collecting wastes and processing that waste. And so you'll find most of them have these sorts of 10-year plans around their waste management strategies. That includes recycling, disposal, potentially energy generation. So all of the things that we've been talking about in this section can all fit within wherever your local council is. And because you're there, you might even see the bins, you see them go out if you don't see them collected. You know what's going on. Use local examples when you're writing about this stuff in your exam so that you make sure that you've got things that are easy to remember and that you can very easily build a little more detail onto. So I'm right here in Port Stephens, and let's have a little bit of a look at the Port Stephens waste management strategy for the next 10 years. So there's a full document. You saw it in the last slide, the kind of cover page for this document that has been prepared by the council in consultation with ratepayers in order to try and address how the council continues to improve its waste management services. There were 4 key outcomes that they identified. This was addressing how council can meet the current targets set by the New South Wales EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, in 21 to 41 waste sustainable materials strategies. So that was the first thing. The second thing was to identify opportunities for council to utilise waste assets and resources in the most efficient manner to maximise recovery and provide waste services more efficiently. The third one, to reduce the community's environmental footprint. And the fourth one, to identify opportunities to reduce waste to landfill. So here is again our disposal or storage of waste. What do we do with it? Well, we just chuck it in landfill. So how are we dealing with trying to reduce the amount that's going into landfill? So you can see under all 4 of these key outcomes, there were some strategies that or actions that went with each of these outcomes. So investigating systems for the processing of waste, the introduction of a third bin. This third bin is for Port Stephens, a green bin, so it'll be for green waste. At the moment, all of the green waste in this area goes into the red bin and gets collected as part of the landfill bin. And we have one yellow lidded bin, and that bin is the recycling bin, and all recycling goes in there and gets collected every fortnight. So that's paper, cardboard, glassware, plastics, aluminium cans, for example. So everything that could be recycled goes in there. And obviously that's part of the processing system because all of that waste then needs to be separated out for effective recycling. Regional cooperation, coordination and service delivery. These are part of the efficiency drives. Waste avoidance, reduction and resource recovery. So this again relates to our waste management hierarchy and how we try and maximize things at the top levels and minimize the disposal that occurs right at the bottom of this hierarchy. And that can also occur through the expansion of litter prevention and management and community education. So education is a very important part of the process, and you will find a lot of materials on most councils' websites trying to raise awareness of what the council is doing and what individuals can do in order to support this drive towards more efficient waste management. The final thing has a couple of strategies to the recycling of additional materials through procuring of waste technologies, so improved technologies, and we've already talked about some of those in other videos, and also the use of alternate processing options or locations. Again, we've talked about the not in my backyard stuff. And for Port Stephens in particular, it's kind of a peninsula. It's surrounded by water on 3 of the 4 sides. And so therefore, there's a lot of potential damage that can be done if we get leachate out of landfill going into the water systems, disturbing the waterways, disturbing those very important local water communities, and so critically important that Port Stephens Council think about how they're going to manage waste effectively. Couple of examples of where this happens. Salamander Bay has a waste transfer unit, and you can see a little bit of an idea of not only the waste unit itself, but some of the rehabilitation that's actually occurring around this site. And also, New Line Road is in Raymond Terrace, and this is another area where waste is collected and sorted, and material that can be reused is separated out from the other stuff which has to end up in the landfill. So Port Stephens has a number of areas where they are looking at managing their waste and are trying to upgrade their facilities, improve the technologies, increase the amount of recycling and reuse that happens with waste, in order to make their waste collection more efficient and to meet some of those very important targets. When you look through the document that Port Stephens Council has put out, you see a lot of the same sorts of things that we see in other places. Interestingly enough, you'll notice on another video that we've ourselves been through a waste audit, and in fact the same thing happened at council level. They went through an audit of the sorts of things that were going in the yellow bins and the sorts of things that were going in the red bins. And what you'll notice is when we start to have a look at some of the stuff that's going in these red bins, which you remember, this is the stuff that is going into landfill. And you'll notice, just as we did in our school audit, we've got a lot of stuff that is potentially can be recycled or repurposed. A lot of green waste. I mentioned that's one of the proposals that council are putting forward, is the availability of a green bin. So some of this organic waste, food scraps, vegetation, lawn clippings, all of those sorts of things can be separated out. But you can see there's still a proportion of plastics that are in there. There's a proportion of glass that's in there. So there's a whole lot of stuff that potentially could be separated out from that landfill bin and recycled more efficiently. You can see when we look at what the people in this council are actually recycling, a majority of it, almost half of it, is paper and cardboard. Very small amount of organics that are going in there, possibly associated with, as I said before, things like pizza boxes. Some of the foodstuffs can be left in those pizza boxes, and you look, well, it's cardboard, let's just recycle it, but sometimes it can't actually be recycled in that way. A lot of glass is also going into those bins, and then plastic, as well as a few other bits and pieces. But what you can see is there's certainly a number of things that are going into the red bins at the moment that could just as easily go into the yellow bins. How do you do that? How do you raise awareness for people to be doing their recycling in a more consistent and a more effective manner? It's interesting too that some of the other things that we've talked about are also part of this Port Stephens strategy. So they've looked at the waste management hierarchy just as we have and said, how do we take advantage of this whole preference for avoiding waste, reducing waste, reusing waste, as opposed to just disposing of waste in landfill. And one of the little models, and these sorts of visuals are often quite useful, is what they've called the circular economy. So rather than having everything going from manufacturing to sale to use to disposal, which is a linear economy, they're looking at a cycle. So a circular economy where things go in at maybe various points and cycle around so that we don't have this continuous buildup of waste material that's often single use and then disposed of. An interesting document, particularly for those of us who live in Port Stephens, to see what council is actually doing in order to try and manage the local waste output. One more graphic, and I won't continue to talk about these graphics because you can have a look at them for yourself. And if you're going to add detail, if you're going to try and be more precise in the answers that you're providing, then you want to try and pull some of this information out about your local council, because it means it's going to be more relevant. You're more likely to remember it, but you're also likely to link in with it, because these things are going to affect you. You are going to see these bins around the area that you live. You are going to be putting these bins out potentially from your own house, which means you're going to also be putting things into them. So thinking about the types of things that you recycle, what sort of stuff goes in different bins, can be really important in the process of not only caring for the environment, but also being aware of how we manage waste. So you can see this is just another little graphic for the Port Stephens Council in terms of what they're trying to do around preferred waste management systems. So it starts obviously with the hierarchy, with the waste management hierarchy and what sort of things we can do about that. Very early in that hierarchy, we've got recycling, and recycling does happen here, but it could be more efficient. Recovering and treating particular materials so that maybe they can be separated out and repurposed for something. Looking at curbside collection options, and as I said, one of the things, that introduction of a green bin, which hasn't happened yet, but maybe happening very soon. So you can go through this. If you're in Port Stephens, then this is definitely worth having a look at. If you're not, grab one that's similar from your local council and have a look at exactly what sort of things are being done in terms of local waste management. Just as for the Central Coast, the Port Stephens area also has a number of videos on their websites that provide information about the sort of things that they're doing, the locations of these major waste treatment areas, both in terms of sorting, around reducing, reusing and recycling, but also around where a material is going into landfill and what's actually happening to it once it's there. So definitely have a look at some of these as well. Just expands your knowledge base a little. Usually they're nice summaries. I know that the couple that I've looked at here in Port Stephens provide some really valuable information about exactly what's going on, and that very important partnership where the council are responsible for the environment, the local environment, as well as waste management, and how you balance the needs of all of the stakeholders that you are responsible to. We've got one area that we need to look at in terms of waste management, and that's the demand for waste. And we're going to look at that in our final video in this section coming up soon. Thanks for watching.